So in 2019, I, maybe you, along with, many, many Israelis, I don't know if it was hundreds of thousands or millions, were glued to our television sets watching the Bereshit lunar lander,
Right.
which was
Yeah.
going to land on the moon. It was part of the Google X Prize lunar landing program. It originally had a big cash prize. Nobody got the cash prize because they passed the deadline, but actually, Israel's Bereshit team got $1 million from Google just because they got close to the moon. So as we all know,
Well, they got
the
to the
Bereshit,
moon, but they
well, they
crashed.
got to the moon in pieces,
They're
exactly.
actually
So
on the moon. But yeah.
right, exactly.
It's
So
just,
the lander was supposed to land, and we were going to be the first to get this small washing machine sized lunar lander that was going to land on the moon. It wasn't going to last very long, but anyway, it crashed. And we were all watching, and the screen went blank, and there was silence in the room. Bibi Netanyahu was there, and everybody was like, "Oh my God, what happened?" And then they said, "We're sorry, the mission has failed. We'll see you all again another time." And you would think, and in some countries, in some places, that would be a career-ending mistake, a failure of epic proportions. But not in Israel. Not in
wait,
Israel.
well,
In
I don't
Israel,
think so. I think it'll be. I disagree. I do agree. I do agree that a lot of the places that we accept failure much more, and as
mhm.
long as we fail forward, it's clearly failing forward. But I think a country that has very little, no space exploration and tries to land something on the moon, and it gets literally, I think they said it was like 20 meters above the moon and it crashed, which is just hilarious in a tragic way, right? 99.9999999%
Right,
way
right.
better. Like I'm not even exaggerating, right? Maybe more than that. And it fails. But that is a success in its own right, right? Even though, like, ironically, or what's the saying? Shoot for the moon, even if you miss, you'll land upon the stars. So it's like, I think it's a very relevant. There's every time relevant to say that we shot for the moon, we got to the moon not how we wanted, but we ended up deep in space. Of course, the mission
And
itself was a
yeah.
failure, but
Well,
to
it wasn't a fail. It wasn't a failure if you imagine what the goals were. The goals were, there were two goals. One was to get something on the moon, but the other was to inspire young people to go into
right.
STEM and to go into math and science and space tech. And from that perspective, it was a huge success. They met with so many young people, and they got young people to get excited about space again. And in fact, I'm actually working on a story right now for Israel 21C about trends in space technology coming out of Israel. And we're a
It's
small little
I
we're a
love this.
small little country, with but we're probably the world's leader in small satellites.
Satellites.
Um, we don't send big satellites up; we send small satellites. And why do we send small satellites? This is such an interesting point. I learned this from a woman named Hila Haddad, who is involved with the Israel Space Agency, and I interviewed her for this article, and she explained to me that because of where Israel is in the world, geographically, we can't launch satellites to our east, which would take us over, Arab countries that we traditionally have not had good relations with. So we launch them in the other direction, which goes against. I don't remember if it's against gravity or the winds or what, but it's harder to do it in the other direction. So therefore, we've had to make our satellites smaller. So the reason we have small satellites is not just because we like to do things small, but because we were constrained by where we could launch. I never knew that.
It's
That was
amazing what
fascinating.
constraints can do. Yeah, for those that don't know, when you launch something into space, when you go to the International Space Station, it doesn't just go out. It goes out and it circles the Earth. It goes out, it gets into orbit of the Earth, and then it leaves the orbit to go where it wants to go if you're going to leave the orbit. And so that's why it needs to go as the Earth rotates and revolves. There's a lot of engineering, a lot of science that's involved with that. And so therefore you need to have good, be wider than Israel's 9 miles in order
Right.
to be able to do that, because the world rotates, east to west, kind of from an angle, but from the axis.
Right.
So space. Let's talk about the future of space. I've been speaking about this a lot lately with my friends. Is that when I talk about technology, also with prospects and clients, was still knowing to marketing technology for marketing, marketing for technology companies, is that Israel's advances in technology appears to have come from the military, out of force out of defense. So I think you can think of where the future is where we'll see more technology. So, it was first, it was weapons, and then let's see, cybersecurity, AI, very important for the military. Data processing, right, as part of related, right? Being able to process a lot of data quickly and organize and sort data to give you what you need. And I think the future, in order to control things on Earth, to control things on space. I mean, you can see that just with Elon Musk Starlink able to restore internet to basically all of Ukraine, have better internet than most of the Western
Hmm.
world even right now. I think, I think like 500 megabytes download or something like that, 100 upload or something. Right, and that's so. The future is in space when it comes to defense. So I think that's why we're seeing a big push there. And so is it safe to say, not just from Israel, but from every country, we should be seeing a huge push into space for national security issues?
I mean, I haven't researched that, but I would imagine that, space is the source of the next, perhaps the next wars. I mean, I was thinking about, that episode in season 2 of the Apple TV Plus series For All Mankind, which did a reimagining, sort of an alternative reality of the space race. In this alternative reality, we're already on Mars, but at one point there's a space race between a war between the United States and Russia on the moon. The U.S. wants to send nuclear weapons, or maybe Russia does, and there's going to be a battle, of nuclear power on the moon. It ends peacefully, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point the creators of that show and Ronald D. Moore, who was behind Battlestar Galactica as well, so he seems to have a good prophetic attitude on the future. Let's hope there's not going to be Cylons in our future as well. For those who watch Battlestar Galactica, now you're terrified, but okay.
I got Yeah, it's not trying to scare the audience. I think people are less scared about that than anything. More scared in general of probably the nuclear war and the satellites. I don't think the future, the next big war is going to be in space. I think the next will be cybersecurity related.
Hmm.
That's my. I just think they'll just hack and shut off your water and your power. And once you get the people to turn against your government, you already have to tax soldiers. So they'll tax
Right.
civilian infrastructure, which is a far bigger pain for our country than attacking soldiers. So and military infrastructure. So I think that's probably where we're going to be heading in let's say in the wars in the next 20 to 30 years, maybe. But I could be wrong. It could be more in space. What is that anything else on the space front that Israel should know about? Will Israel not be sending large satellites? I feel like getting up in space is like the number one priority right now when it comes to, let's say, defense and becoming a stronger power. Would you agree with what I just said? And is there anything else on the space front? If not, I want to ask you actually about finance.
Right. So some of the most interesting companies that are, space tech companies in Israel are doing sort of small things, but not military war defense, types of projects. So I'll just name a couple of them that I really like. One of them is a company that is making small electric powered, maybe solar powered plasma thrusters, tiny little rocket engines that can attach to like little tiny satellites. So some of those little satellites that Israel is sending up and other things. And why is this important? Because there is a space junk problem which is basically we've sent so much stuff into space, like satellites and other exploratory vehicles. They're going in low Earth orbits, and when they get up there into space and they lose their power or their usefulness or their life
Connection.
expectancy is done. They're just up there. There's no way to get them down, and space is getting cluttered such that it may be problematic to send up missions in the future because you're going to have a collision with some of the space junk. One way to get the space junk out of the space is to put a little tiny rocket on the satellite so that you can maneuver it long after it's no longer functioning. I thought that was a fascinating, forward thinking Israeli technology. Another one that I really loved is a company called Space Pharma. And what Space Pharma does is they make little tiny laboratories that they can either fit in their own satellites or send to the International Space Station, or even they're planning to send one on the Breshit 2, which is the follow-up to Breshit, which is one of the reasons why Breshit wasn't a failure, because we're already doing the second one, which launched sometime in 2024, 2025, but put one there and they can do experiments, pharmaceutical experiments in space. And it turns out there's a lot we can learn from zero gravity drug development. It's faster. I
Ouch.
don't, we learn things that we don't know if we do it on the ground. And so that's what this company is doing. And that's an amazing use of
Yeah, but
space.
aren't there like, do we have the technology to make a certain place like zero gravity in a sense?
Here
Like
on Earth.
indoors. Yeah, like I know NASA has some like zero gravity places too, so astronauts can train and all that. That it wouldn't work there.
That I did not ask that question when I interviewed them, so I don't know. But they're
All right,
betting
we'll see
on
before.
actual space.
Okay, and duration two, would do that in the next couple of years. Is they going to do the same thing? Is that the same goal? Is just to get to the moon and land and just do some, I don't know, geology and science, or is it the same goal, or are they trying to do more than that this time around?
I mean, I've read all kinds of crazy thoughts. I mean, ideas about, mining the moon for minerals and sending those back to Earth,
Yeah,
putting moon bases on the moon and as well as on Mars. And there you've got an interesting company.
that's inevitable. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
I read recently that they found two minerals not found on Earth on an asteroid, on a meteor.
Wow.
Sorry,
That would
I
be that
read
would
that
be
just like
cool.
2 weeks ago.
I was thinking
Which
about this
makes you
really.
wonder, right? Imagine what that's worth. Just that piece of junk rock, space rock.
Well, I mean, yes. I mean, I haven't studied that, but I was going to mention another company called Helios, an Israeli space tech company, and what they do is they actually have a way of they take um, the soil from the moon, and I suppose they could do this on Mars as well. They heat it up to like impossibly hot temperatures, essentially melting it, and then they can separate it and extract out oxygen from moon dirt, moon soil. And this is incredibly important because if you're going to put a base on the moon, you need to have a replenishable supply of oxygen. You can't just send it up from Earth, you'll run out. And you need oxygen both to breathe, and you also need it for the fuel that will get the people back from the moon to power the rovers that are on the moon or on Mars. So again, another small but important piece of it's not a rocket, it's not SpaceX, we're not sending big rockets to the moon, although we do send Israeli astronauts to the moon. But these small pieces can, this is what Israel's great about. We do things small but important.